you.
Thank you very much, although I would like to continue the conversation as it's stimulating many different thoughts about the value of the theological reflections. I would like us to move forward to our next speaker, Reverend Professor Thomas Kremer, the chair of the Theology of the Christian East from the Faculty of Theology at the Catholic University of Eichstätt-Ingolstadt, where as well there is the Collegium Orientalium, which I'm very, very familiar with. And we look forward to hearing Professor Kremer's presentation. His work is entitled Ecumenism in the Diaspora Near East Experience. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and I now need there's a presentation. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the invitation. I've been invited to speak about ecumenical experiences in the Near East. Although I live in Germany, I hope to be able to present various aspects through numerous visits to different countries, which I'm now trying to analyze. I made the title now, The Tension Between Idealistic Endeavor, Self-Righteous Demarcation, and an Ecumenism of Blood, Case Studies on the Ecumenical Engagement of Eastern Catholic Churches in the Middle East. As we all know, in many places in the Middle East, the diversity of the various Eastern Catholic churches is present simultaneously, as are their Orthodox sister churches. They take part not only in the Middle East Council of Churches, but are naturally also in constant exchange in daily life. What is striking here, in my opinion, is that both the real-life interaction and official ecumenical statements vary greatly depending on the location and the denominations involved. As the title of the lecture suggests, the ecumenical relationship oscillates between idealistic endeavor, self-righteous demarcation, and an ecumenism of blood. In addition, the dimension of a common nation can also play a role in the ecumenical attitude, mostly, as I think, in a beneficial way. Since Eastern Catholic churches are represented in large numbers, or even in a majority in certain countries of the Middle East, especially in Lebanon, Iraq, and Israel, Palestine, they play an outstanding, by no means marginalized role in ecumenical dialogue and cooperation. And I now try to illustrate this reality in a series of examples. I start with idealistic endeavor and initiatives, the example of the Patriarch of Babylonia, when he still used this title. These idealistic initiatives include the Chaldean Patriarch's Louis Sacco idealistic attempt to restore the unity of the Church of the East. In 2015, the head of the Chaldean Catholic Church, Patriarch Sacco, made a remarkable statement. He demonstratively offered his resignation in order to pave the way for the reunification of the three denominations, the Assyrian Church of the East, the Ancient Church of the East, and the Chaldean Catholic Church. That means all churches that refer to the East Syriac tradition of Mesopotamia. Sacco proposed the ecclesiastical hierarchies of all three churches should be set to zero to allow for unification and the appointment of a new common patriarch. This proposal foresaw the unification into an ecclesiastically independent church, which would nevertheless be in communion with Rome. The patriarch based his proposal primarily on the common thread and the emigration of Christians in Iraq. The name of the new church should be simply Church of the East. The unity of the churches in Iraq, churches of long apostolic tradition but small and beaten by events, is our only salvation, the patriarch said. Sacco also announced that he had proposed a joint synod to the two wings of the Apostolic Church of the East to prepare for a unification. The serving patriarchs could then enable the election of a giant head by resigning. Sarko also said that the time was ripe to abandon nationalist positions and return to the Church of Origin. Patriarch Adai II of the Old Assyrian Church of the East had also supported the unity endeavors of the Chaldean Patriarch and was probably prepared to make his mandate available for the election of a new Patriarch. As far as recognition of the Pope in Rome is concerned, Patriarch Sarko refers to the joint Christological declaration signed in 1994 by Pope John Paul II and Catholicos Mardinka that the Assyrian Church of the East and the Catholic Church profess the same faith in Jesus Christ. It was also stated that the old Christological controversies were largely due to misunderstandings. The death of Catholicos Mardinka in March 2015 dealt a setback to Patriarch Sarko's call for reunification. In mid-July 2015, while the Patriarchate was still vacant, the Assyrian Church of the East rejected the proposal for unity with the Chaldeans because the relationship with Rome had not been clarified in their favor. The union talks were subsequently cancelled. Patriarch Georgis, who was elected in 2015, did not enter into further talks. It is obvious the role of the Pope is and remains the biggest obstacle to far-reaching agreements. Was the attempt therefore in vain? I don't think so. The temporary failure of this project has not discouraged Patriarch Sarko. In the end, it was seen by the others as a sign of willingness, and the mutual understanding is still very good. The Zogby initiative could easily be cited here as a second example, but this is the subject of another presentation. Secondly, self-righteous demarcation, a certain alienation between the churches of the Byzantine tradition. The fact that relations between the Melkite Greek Catholic Church and the Roman Orthodox Church of Antioch have been burdened by tensions for some time is something that particularly saddens me due to my personal relationship with the Melkites. The idea, the narrative of a Church of the Arabs was just as unable to overcome a certain competitive situation as the heroic, but in its reception completely ineffective Zogby initiative. As a result, mutual demarcation sometimes prevails, so that unfortunately a certain self-righteousness on both sides sometimes overweights the ecumenical impetus. The current discussions surrounding the issue of celebrating the 300 years anniversary of the events of 1724 are ecumenically relevant and topical. While, for example, I think the Ruthenians in Carpathia and some other Eastern Catholic churches have recently celebrated their union anniversaries with relative ease, the announcement of a Jubilee year by the Melkites was particularly badly received by the Roman Orthodox Church. Here, the quite justified fundamental question is posed in all clarity. What are we actually celebrating? Is it really a reason to celebrate, or should we commemorate the events of 1724 in a different way? On the other hand, the announcement of the Jubilee triggered a feeling on the Orthodox side of the need to get to the heart of the matter clearly and concisely, and at the same time to reaffirm the Roman Orthodox Patriarchate of Antioch's commitment to ecumenical dialogue. What is the official position that Patriarch John presented 3 weeks ago during the opening of the International Symposium, The Orthodox Church of Antioch, from the 15th to the 18th century towards a proper understanding of history? Some extracts from the speech in which he starts with underlining the ecumenical endeavor of Patriarch Peter III in the 11th century. Peter III, who tried to prevent a schism between Rome and Constantinople. I cite from the speech. It would be desirable for our brothers today who refuse to resort to conciliarity and claims primacy of sees and their infallibility, hear the words of this patriarch: suppressing the conciliar sense is a sin. Conciliarity is the starting point for anyone who wants to maintain unity and who does not want to isolate and marginalize others. Despite the severe hardships and persecutions, the leaders of the Church of Antioch never lost sight of the fact that the only response to attempts at unity through coercion and material worldly temptations was total and complete devotion to the spirit of Orthodox conciliarity. Hence Antioch's rejection of the Council of Ferrara-Florence. With the advent of the Ottomans and the first attempts at Western colonization in the East, Rome sent missionaries to us not to help persecuted Christians, but to entice them to join it, accompanied by promises of commercial and economic opportunities and political protections by the European powers, so those who became weak under such pressure joined it. Fraternally, I leave it to those who departed from us and joined the West in accordance with an agreement that allowed them to preserve their rituals and maintain their patriarchal system to evaluate the results of their choice. We must, at the Antiochian level, break through the barriers of history, tear down the remaining walls of enmity, abandon emotional courtesies and superficial closeness, translate our love for one another into a sincere revelation, activate local theological dialogue, and deepen common historical research so that we can strengthen our true Antiochian identity through joint scientific works that contribute to the healing of our historical memory. This healing process began on this Balamant Hill 30 years ago, when uniatism as a method to unite with Rome was rejected. We were close to achieving a project of unity between us and the Roman Catholics, but the difference in the understanding of partnership, conciliarity, and the relationship with the churches outside the Antiochian scope prevented the realization of this project. Should we give up and abandon the dream of Antiochian unity? In conclusion, 300 years have passed since the unfortunate schism of 1724, which led to a rift in our Antiochian Orthodox Church, resulting in unfortunate and sad social, economic, and political repercussions. It is our hope that this conference in Balamant 3 weeks ago will add to the foundations we have put in place in order to restore unity and harmony between our church and the Roman Catholic Church, and that it will also promote the strengthening of fraternal ties between the 5 patriarchates which bear the name of Antioch, and stir the spirit of kinship among them, so that our witness to the Lord of glory may be one. End of my citation. What can be taken from this speech? I get the impression that the sense of injury caused by the events of 1724 dominates us. If this is the case, it is not surprising that a Union Jubilee must seem like a scorn. As far as the matter is concerned, one will have to state an ecclesiology as expressed in particular by Vatican I ultimately proves to be a hurdle that seems insurmountable, whereas only complete conciliarity while maintaining the principle of autocephaly appears to be acceptable. In addition, the accusation of active proselytism is clearly put forward. I don't see that a way is being shown here to overcome this aporia. In the end, it remains a matter of demarcation despite the recognizable desire for unity in the Patriarchate of Antioch. My third point is ecumenism of blood, the case of Syriac Catholic, Syriac Orthodox relationships. Pope Francis made the powerful statement that the Christian vocation and the message of faith of the churches in the Middle East is that Christians today participate in the ecumenism of blood. In the Middle East, Christians of all churches are aware of the barbaric threat posed by widespread terrorist activity, and all churches have martyrs and confessors of faith. They all have to endure oppression and imprisonment. In terms of fraternal interaction, this has brought the churches closer together. Church leaders regularly join forces to call on those who hold political power to change their policies and promote peace in the Middle East, especially to help Christians to remain firmly rooted in their homelands. That what has impressed me very positively in recent years is the ecumenical closeness of the Syriac Catholic and Syriac Orthodox churches. In 2015, I had the opportunity to conduct an interview in Eichstätt with the Syriac Catholic Patriarch Ignatius Yusuf Yunan, who expressed himself like this, whereby we have to bear in mind the very recent ISIS attacks at that time. I cite the Patriarch, who said, "As far as our two churches of Syriac tradition are concerned, the Orthodox and the Catholic, I can say that we are in the best of contacts. We have never had a time of such true ecumenical contact between our churches. We, Orthodox and Catholics, consider ourselves as one Syriac church with an Orthodox and a Catholic branch. With the election of the new Syriac Orthodox Patriarch Ignatius Ephraim Karim, these contacts have intensified in terms of both quality and quantity. We meet often, talk to each other regularly, and advise each other on how we should respond to this appalling situation of our Syriac churches. We are also constantly thinking about how our churches can come even closer together than in the past, also in order to better coordinate the pastoral work of our two churches, both in the Middle East and in the Diaspora. And when I asked him explicitly about the situation in the Diaspora, for example in Germany, where so many Syriac Orthodox parishes exist, but only a few Syrian Catholics at the time, he said, "This also shows that the faithful are often ahead of us when it comes to the question of true ecumenism. Therefore, we do not prevent our believers in any way if they wish to live their Christian vocation in communion with the Syriac Orthodox Church, where we have no ecclesiastical structures. We are convinced that our separation has been purely nominal and has nothing to do with the substance of our Christian faith. We even go so far as to participate in the Eucharist together. I take no offense at all at receiving communion in a Syriac Orthodox Church to witness our unity in faith and the sacraments. I myself cannot share this position that one must first have realized full church communion in order to be able to share communion. If we are convinced that the one true Eucharist is celebrated in our two liturgies, why should we refrain from receiving communion in the same liturgy, in which the Eucharistic presence of the Lord is real? I have already practiced it myself, as have some bishops, certainly not only a few priests, and we have no problems with it. We are the only sister churches that share this conviction that there is nothing really substantial that separates us apart from the historical circumstances that unfortunately led to the separation when a part of the Orthodox reunited with the Holy See of Rome. We have come to the point of overcoming the past. We are not stuck in the past, but must look to the future as we are all faced with the challenge of survival. This demands our attention, and we prioritize this. End of citation. When the somewhat frightened editors of our diocese homepage asked whether this should really be published and whether the Patriarch would not have to fear that someone in Rome would cause him problems, he answered with full conviction that nothing of his statement should be taken away. Now, the assertion that there are no theological reasons for separation is an apodictic thesis that perhaps falls a little short in this form, and yet, in my opinion, here we recognize a courageous ecumenical statement within the context of an ecumenism of blood. My fourth point, I think I have to make it a little bit shorter. Nation as a unifying link in ecumenical relationships, the Armenian perspective. Let's take a short look at the unifying link that connects the Armenian nation across denominational boundaries. The Armenian Church is a prime example of how a church lives entirely from its historical experience and generates its own spirituality. All historical narratives are dominated by emphasizing we are the first Christian people. The historical memory of the Armenians is then essentially characterized by expulsion and persecution, namely as a people, whereby the persecution by no means begins in 1915, but nevertheless culminates in the Metz Yerern, the great crime of the Armenian genocide. In my opinion, the Armenians' historical experience and the associated awareness of being one people and one nation are so strong that the common bond of the nation even outweighs the later confessional division, so that today the national consciousness can include the widest sections of diaspora Armenians worldwide of different denominations. In this way, Armenian Apostolic, Armenian Catholic, and Armenian Protestants can be regarded as a unity to a certain extent. However, the element of nation, which John Meyendorff describes as the original sin of orthodoxy, forms in some ways a bridge in this case that is able to overcome confessional divisions. Perhaps it's sufficient to show only this picture. It shows that especially in the city of Aleppo, there's a really very close relationship between the Armenian Apostolic, the Armenian Catholic, and the Armenian Protestant community. I wanted to speak a little bit about Jerusalem ecumenism, only to say that the week of prayer for the unity of the Christians in Jerusalem is celebrated in a way that I will have one of my last conclusions. And so I present my conclusions. The question arises as to what fundamental perspectives this opens for the ecumenical role of the Eastern Catholic churches. What conclusions can I personally draw from the experiences described? I would like to formulate a few theses that may well stimulate a controversial discussion. We should be grateful for visions, even if they are unrealistic. They are an expression of goodwill and, as such, a moving force for ecumenical dialogue. We should be very carefully in celebrating union anniversaries. They revitalize negative aspects of an outdated uniatism reinforce division, and are counterproductive for the ecumenical goal of reunifying the churches. Let us seek for other forms of remembrance. An unsurmountable aporia arises when the claim of perfect conciliarity while maintaining the principle of autocephaly clashes with an ecclesiology as formulated above all by Vatican I. In this case, unfortunately, the involved Eastern Catholic Church is nothing other than the image of what one does not want to become. We should discuss once again whether shared communion can only be an expression of complete unity or also a path to unity. Nation is not only close to original sin, but also an opportunity. We need a very differentiated view. And we should try to pray together as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kremer, for this wonderful tour. I was thinking of the many different churches of the Christian East as you were talking, and each of them have their own historical, national issues, as you were saying here, and identities and whatnot that are kept in mind as we're looking there. I'm intrigued by the last point, actually, that you have on your conclusion, and where and how do you've mentioned about, the ecclesiology. So how do you see prayer working in this ability to be proponents of that dialogue?
I skipped what I wanted to say about Jerusalem. And I made myself the experience when I studied in Jerusalem that it was very impressive to see all these different Christian denominations praying together in the different churches, and this overcomes all the other obstacles which we have if we do not share a common prayer. And so I'm really convinced if it is possible, it's not necessary to start with the Eucharist, because there are so many problems arising, but praying the Vespers or some other prayer together, it's really very helpful to reduce all these human barriers which we have in us, or which we bear in us, or many of us bear in us, and then the ecumenical process is much easier. So I'm very convinced that it's necessary. Yeah.
We have some time for some questions from
Yes, I
members
have
of
a
our
question.
audience. Yes. Go ahead, Father Dutsko.
I want to ask you about what you mentioned as the ecumenism of blood. In 1980, Cardinal Joseph Slipy, the head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, spoke about the ecumenism of martyrs, that when he was in prison and in deportation, the Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants, they got together and started to pray. And they prayed together. Interestingly, Pope John Paul II, when he visited Ukraine in 2001, he also spoke of the ecumenism of martyrs. The problem is that when we left the underground, when we left the catacombs, then the divisions were reborn again. And even Rome told us, no, you can't celebrate, you can't receive the Eucharist together with the, you can't celebrate together with the Orthodox. So I don't, is this ecumenism of blood, which you presented in the Near East, the same thing as what Cardinal Slipy and John Paul II mentioned as the ecumenism of martyrs? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I think in substance, it's almost the same thing, because the situation in Iraq, perhaps in 2015, was really a situation of it was a very dangerous situation with ISIS. But I also see a difference, because the Syriac Catholic and the Syriac Orthodox Church are now continuing to take part in the liturgies and to cooperate in a way which seems not to be possible in Ukraine. So although they are not now everywhere in a situation of persecution, that's not true, but they nevertheless continue to do many things together, which is, from my opinion, not possible in Ukraine. I don't know if there are official reactions from Rome, but they continue, and in Ukraine it was not continued after the end of the underground.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for all your examples, which I can understand very well. Just a question regarding the connection Syrian Catholic and Syrian Orthodox. We have in 1984 the Christological Declaration between Pope John Paul II and Zacharias, and it is the most going forward declaration which the Catholic Church has with any other church, and it is saying that in cases of necessity, no, I'm not sure, that believers faithful of one church can ask a priest of the other church the sacraments of confession, of Eucharist, and sickness at the ointness. So I wonder whether the patriarch, the Syrian Catholic patriarch, has that in mind, or whether he sees that as a specific way of the Antioch Church. Of course, I would like also to mention that the Syrian Orthodox Church is feeling close to the Catholic Church. Zacharias also said several times, what can we do more than we have done? What is still, when is unity coming? So what can we do more? So just the question whether there was this common statement of 1984 is in the horizon.
Yes, I think this statement is also in the horizon, but not very often cited. It's the atmosphere of this statement, which is realized in the common ecclesiastical life of both Syriac Catholic and Syriac Orthodox churches. I think it's not possible that Patriarch Yunan has only these very, very seldom cases in his mind that somebody has no opportunity at all to come to a priest of his own church, but that he supports also these situations that Syriac Catholics and Syriac Orthodox come together and even celebrating feasts together in a way that they interpret these. It's like a restriction that it's only allowed in special urgencies that they interpret these texts in a very, very, very open mind and also for normal situations where everyone had the possibility to go to his own church. So I think he supports really intercommunion and inter-celebration of both churches.
Thank you very much for this enlightening talk, and I look forward to continuing that conversation after, but now we have our next speaker awaiting us, Very Reverend Professor Yuri Piavakomov. He's the Associate Professor of History of